Gail Shields Miller, and I'm board member of BigTentUSA. Okay. If you're new to Big Tent, welcome. We're so glad to have you here. Please visit BigTentUSA.org or scan the QR code to learn more about our work and sign up for our mailing list to stay in the loop on upcoming events and become part of our nationwide community of democracy warriors. Today, we are thrilled to be hosting another Big Tent USA Substack Live with two incredible guests. The prolific Rick Wilson, founder of the Lincoln Project, and author of what may be the greatest book title of all time, Everything Trump Touches Dies, and the brilliant Christopher Armitage, creator of the popular Existentialist Republic newsletter on Substack. We're also excited to announce today that we are in collaboration with Chris to make civic engagement more accessible and actionable, with practical calls to action that people can easily put into practice and share. Because truth be told, democracy isn't strengthened by outrage alone. It is strengthened when people have the tools to act again and again and again. So drop your questions in the chat for Rick and Chris. And with that, Rick and Chris, are you there?
You bet.
Okay, yeah. Rick, I'm going to turn it over to you. And it's great to see you. Last year it was Fire Island. Today,
last year was Fire Island. Renee sings her best. And we miss you guys.
And Chris, my new bud, good to see you. And why don't you start us off, Rick? Take it away.
Look, I think we're in a moment right now where, the fight ahead, as the title of this Substack Live shows, we've got to move from outrage to organization. And there have been a lot of things in the last year and a half that have been horrific. We've seen the economy deliberately crippled. We've seen a pointless war with Iran that we're losing. We've seen Trump's extra constitutional and extra legal behavior. And those are kind words for saying he basically governs like a mob boss. All of it has sort of demeaned and degraded the country, but we do have a great opportunity ahead of us to start rebuilding the institutional spine of the country, to start getting in the fight, to win big political gains this fall. But it's going to really rely on all of us to convert those political gains from the fall into accountability and action going forward. And so happy to be with you guys today, and really looking forward to a great conversation. Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, I think this is a really important subject right now. I'm just seeing with like the work that I do, publishing and other Existentialist Republic folks, that there is the response. You read the top comments and it's like, oh, we're cooked and it doesn't matter and nothing's going to be done about it and about all these bad things but that's their goal. This was the tactic all along, was to flood the zone and cause hopelessness and despair. The answer isn't false hope. The answer is pick up real tools and apply them effectively and learn and become more sophisticated, because the difference between a movement that succeeds and a movement that fails, both can go through the same thing. The one that succeeds grows in strength, and the one that fails shrinks in strength. That means recruiting. It means learning. It means iterative processes of saying, okay, that didn't work. Good. We learned one way that doesn't work. Let's figure out another way and keep pushing until we figure it out. We have the numbers. So that's a pretty big advantage to have, asymmetric political warfare.
It sure is. I want to say one thing that you made a point just then. It is one of the most fundamental tactics of authoritarians and authoritarianism to flood the zone with, as Steve Bannon calls it, shit, and to make you feel helpless and to make you feel pointless and to make you feel like there's nothing you can do. And guys, I have been in this fight for 10 years. In 2015, 11 years now. In 2015, right around this time, I wrote an op-ed for the New York Daily News that said, "With God as my witness, I will not vote for Donald Trump." I was one of the first major Republican consultants in the country to come out and do it. And there have been plenty of days where I've wanted to just hang my head and go, we can't beat this guy. We can't beat this movement. They're too evil. They're got too much money. They're too determined. And yes, they are powerful in ways that very few American political movements have ever been. But they are not impossible to defeat. We did it in 2020 as a movement, okay? We understood it. We did it in 2018 as a movement. We understood it. The thing that's different now, and the thing that I think is the most important understanding I've come to in the last couple of years, and I'm writing another book about this right now, just turning the hopefully next to last draft. It's called The Hate Machine, is to start understanding the systems around how they do this. And there was a question in the chat about misinformation, and that's the top of the pyramid for them. They rely on having a group of people who watch Fox News and get their news from Facebook and get their news from Twitter, which is the equivalent of like a raccoon digging through a garbage can to find what it wants to eat. Okay. These things are built to give these people a bubble to live in, built to give them a sense of hermetic, protection from the outside realities of the world. One of the things you can do is start talking to people about why they believe things. Don't just say you're stupid and wrong. Even if they're stupid and wrong, you don't have to lead with that. You'd be like, where did you hear that? Why do you believe that? What led you to think that? Those questions are psychologically more disruptive to a lot of the people that are in that cult of misinformation than you would think. It gives them a moment where they have to go, okay, he didn't insult me, he didn't yell at me. Now I have to really ask myself, do I believe what Laura Ingraham told me that that Al-Said is a Muslim terrorist or what have you? All those things are part of dismantling the disinformation industrial complex that authoritarians always rely on, and that this movement of authoritarians especially relies on.
Yeah, well, and there's just something a lot of people don't realize, just to contextualize like the academic side of this, is that there's something called regime durability.
Yep.
And, it's like once you name a thing, you can start to realize, okay, well, so that this, how fragile or robust is this autocratic regime? And there have been regimes that were far more entrenched than the Trump regime, and they were still toppled. And part of, so then you say, okay, well, how does that happen? It happens, but it doesn't usually happen as quick as you'd like. And there's often a lot of needless suffering, and you have to work hard the entire time. And that's just the deal. Once you're in that pit, the fact is, it's never been easy in human history for the people, the many, the have-nots, to gain power, because the haves have a lot of resources.
Sure.
And so, but we have numbers. And that's one of the things. So in my book, Toppling Tyrants, A Field Guide to Dismantling American Fascism, I talk about is the multiplication machine, how you have to go out and, exactly like Rick is saying, you proselytize for democracy, for truth, for justice. And you're just always, it's not easy to change a single person's mind, but we are always influencing the world around us and within us. You have influence to some degree, and every day you exert that little bit, and you might not see what it is. There were people, this country was founded allowing slavery, and there were abolitionists who signed that Constitution.
Yep.
And almost 100 years later, we finally abolished it. So you have to think, there were people born when that Constitution was signed, grew up, became abolitionists, fought, and died of old age before slavery was abolished. Do you care about freedom, justice, liberty, human rights, anything? Is there anything you care about enough where you're like, wow, I'm willing to spend my whole life fighting for this, and it might not even happen until after I'm gone? And I bet you'll find courage and optimism and hope in that place where you ask that question and you have the answer.
Chris, that story is really one that I was very, very, as a guy who loves our founding as a history lesson, and as an example of something where we could build a flawed thing, we could know it was flawed, and we could pay a terrible price for it, both morally in the period between the founding and the Civil War, and still have to reconcile those problems even today, and yet we keep slowly doing the right thing. And it's sometimes 2 steps forward, 1 step back, but it slowly bends the proverbial arc. We have to think of this country, this republic, and this democracy that way now too, folks. We have to think of this as a long fight. This idea that Trump's going to, one day Trump is going to be gone, one way or the other. The actuarial tables are undefeated, right? One day it's either going to be he's out of office and he's in the Mar-a-Lago adult nursing facility, or maybe he just falls over one day from too many Big Macs, right? One of the two. The world does not immediately flip back to Barack Obama and the sunny days of optimism about this country. We have so much work to do, and we can't accept the idea anymore that our lives can be committed to anything but a long restoration. We have to reform this country. We have to do things that prevent the rise of the next Trump. We have to do things that prevent the danger of authoritarian populism and authoritarian nationalism from defining the pluralism and the constitutional republic that our founders and then 600,000 Americans died for during the Civil War. So there's a lot to be done, but in a lot of ways too, you should be happy about that. You should think about that mission going forward. You should consider, like, we're blessed to not have to know that this is the end. You know, we're going to survive Trump one way or the other. I think we can do it, but it will take more work than some people think.
You know, my publication that I founded is called The Existentialist Republic, and what you're saying really makes me think about how that formed, because for the 4 months after Trump was elected, I would get very upset if anyone tried to talk to me about politics. I was like, I don't care if this has been my career. You're not allowed to talk to me about it. I'm going to play my mandolin and, you know, walk around barefoot and not pretend like this all doesn't exist. And I cried a lot. I cried so much. I was like, we're done. It's all over. It's done. And my journey out of that, I re-explored a lot of philosophical lenses, especially existentialism and absurdism.
Sure.
And what I realized through that lens is that also, even if it's actually too late, I still would want to live my life fighting for my fellow humans, you know, if anyone is enslaved, if anyone is unfree, and that, you know, like you said, it isn't just enough. Or you mentioned Barack Obama. You know, I don't think it's enough to just go back. I think that this is a moment for reflection, and it can be an inflection point for us. We have to get rid of these toxins. We got to flush them out. And anyone who's had food poisoning, we have Donald Trump food poisoning, situation here as a nation and as a world, this toxicity that's within us. And how do we address that? Right. It means accountability that really isn't there. 2008, we didn't put bankers in jail. We didn't hold them accountable. In plenty of countries, it is standard to hold a CEO criminally and civilly liable personally for the financial decisions they make. And instead, we've just been giving out golden parachutes for a long time and creating a two-tiered system. And I'll say too, this moment, it's caused me to think a lot just about what it is to be an American and to be a human and to want to make the world a better place, even if you're not sure how it's going to turn out. That's okay, actually. Maybe you should just still turn up anyway. You should still try to make the world a better place anyway. Just also make sure you take time for yourself.
The work of freedom has a lot of merit. I want to answer a couple of questions and put those out from the audience. What do we do when Mike Johnson refuses to seat newly elected representatives like he did with Representative Adelita Grijalva? Two things. Mike Johnson's going to be looking at the number on election night, okay? And if it's 3 or 4 seats, if somehow things all fall apart, and he's got 3 or 4 seats different, he will play games. He will try to delay. He will try to not seat people. He will listen to Trump, and Trump will try to whip this up. It's all voter fraud, and these people. The trick here, it's an easy trick, but it's easy to describe, hard to pull off. We have to beat them so badly. We have to whip them so badly this fall in the House and in races up and down the ticket that Johnson doesn't have the political will to win. This is a very Clausewitzian kind of thing. We have to take away his political will to play bad, to play to his worst instincts by beating them so badly on the battlefield this fall that he goes, that when Trump calls and says, don't seat these people, he goes, Mr. President, I just can't. Look, they won this sweeping victory. There was a massive blue wave. I can't not do this. Now, do not underestimate the bad faith of Mike Johnson and Donald Trump at all. Do not underestimate that at all. But a big victory is the solution to that problem. And if that doesn't, if the big victory doesn't convince them, we need to be piling in very quickly with lawyers, and then Democratic state governors and Democratic secretaries of state and Democratic attorneys general have to start taking legal action immediately and have to start making sure that Mike Johnson is the target of it, because he's not immune to these things if he's engaged in what will at that point be election interference. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, well, and just if I can throw in a little bit there, I want to moderate people's expectations. I agree with everything Rick just said. I just want to add, as you know, and I don't know, it's, with Rick's background, I'd assume you agree that polling is a legitimate science. Would you agree with that?
Ish.
You know,
flawed but legitimate.
The top pollsters, you know, they have publicly released methodologies. It's a statistical science. When it's done well, they correct based on different, you know, reports, and they get paid. Like, that's their product that they get paid for, and their accuracy is part of that product. Right as of today, I've been driving around the country doing different events, mostly in rural areas. And as of today, the top 10 most respected pollsters, you aggregate poll numbers to say how accurate, so they get more accurate. And 38% is what is approval rating for Donald Trump as of today. I meet a lot of people who still really love that guy and believe everything Fox News tells them. And the Democrats have to win based on like the election, voter suppression and that kind of stuff. Need like a 15-point victory to have like an 8-point victory. Like this is measured by people like the VDem Institute, that we need large margins, and that the unfairness, they're stacking the deck against us, and you got to beat them.
Make no mistake, if the Republicans had not played redistricting games this year, and by the way, I screamed my guts out at Republican or Democratic governors that they had to follow suit. Only 2 of them really did. Very disappointing. Looking at you, Kathy Hochul. They had the ability to level the playing field, but Republicans, we would probably be looking at a 40-seat pickup this year if without redistricting. With all the caveats, all the math right now, we're in the 24 plus range if we have a pretty good day. But we do have to overcome a lot of the shenanigans they're going to do. But I think, at the Lincoln Project, we're pre-planning for that. That's why in a lot of these contestancies where we know they're going to be doing some very dishonest stuff, we're going to be pounding the Republicans with the one message they can't deal with this year, which is you voted for Donald Trump every single time. Well, that message has become very toxic in a lot of these swing seats. Yeah. And you got a guy like Mike Lawler who says, I'm an independent voice. And then, you show the voters that he's voted for Trump 97.4% of the time. That's not independent. That's his wholly owned subsidiary. But yeah, so we're going to do that. There's going to be a lot of pushback on that. Another question that we want to answer: can the Democrats keep us to a strong message? Which candidates are doing well in your opinion? They can, and they must. And the message is very simple. This is crazy. This economy is killing you. The corruption that they're doing in DC is making it worse. And we're going to change it. We're going to vote these guys out who are doing this. If they stick on that message, if they stick on affordability, corruption, etc., they're going to have a very good day. That's where the voters are. The voters are telling us their number one issue, prices and inflation, and that's by a long, long shot. Next, jobs and the economy. So you can cluster those two together. Everything else, even very important things, okay, have fallen down into like the single-digit range. In the last, it's a panel called Most Important Problem. You ask voters, what's the most important problem in your life? So that's right now they're saying inflation and prices, cost of groceries, gas, all that stuff. They don't like Washington. They're mad at DC. They think it's corrupt and sick and wrong. They're not wrong. But things you might think are important to the voters are not important to the voters. Right now, and that doesn't mean the issue isn't important. But if you ask voters, what do you think about, I'm just going to pick one, climate change. In the last most important problem survey we did on that, it was at 1.4%, whereas inflation and prices was at 61%. I know where you need to go on this message. You got to win to do good things. So right now, you got to talk to the voters where they're at, and that is that this economy is killing middle class voters. They're terrified of AI. They hate the data centers. They hate the tariffs. They feel the pain in their daily life every day. So Democrats can stick to that. Will they? I mean, have you met the Democratic Party? God love them. God love them. All right, let me get to this next question, and this is one I want to hear your thoughts on too, Chris. Tallarico does a lot of talking about his faith. Is it breaking through to Christians in Texas? He does, and it is, and I think it is one of the most important lessons for Democrats running statewide in the South and the Midwest, that you can talk about your faith, and you can talk about, Tallarico talks. He's a guy who went to divinity school. He's a guy who understands how to talk about the Christian faith and its role as a compassionate faith, which is a lot different than what you hear from a lot of the folks on the other side of that political equation. But where are you seeing that, Chris? I think faith does have a role to play in a fight against authoritarianism in this country. If one side can seize the mantle of faith completely and say the other side doesn't have it, that's difficult.
Yeah, I mean that's the modern media environment, is to put different messages out and see what people respond to, rather than thinking that you can effectively guess that. That's why A/B testing is like a common phrase. Yeah, you have to try different things out. I've been like I said, traveling across the country, and I see a lot of these God, guns, and I don't know, and Trump like type bumper stickers and all that. And I think even as a non-religious person, I see a sincerity and a thoughtfulness in how Tallarico communicates. And there's plenty of folks out there who have a lot of experience leading the federal candidates and advising them. But to me, I'm just happy to see somebody who I think has a real consideration for his morality and for his approach to how he treats his fellow man, and whether he uses his religion as the lens for that. What comes through that lens is something I find admirable.
Yeah, and I think there's a sense that also communicates to that of decency about him. That is an astounding contrast to Ken Paxton, who says the things about his faith, but does not, shall we say, live a life according to his faith. It is definitely not that nobody's missing that contrast on Ken Paxton, the multiple adulterer, versus James Tallarico, the kid who went to divinity school. This is a great question, and we touched on this a little bit before. One of the reasons we feel so exhausted is we get sort of excited by the tiniest bit of pushback by Republicans against Trump. Todd Blanche being the latest case in point. What are your thoughts? Go ahead, Chris. I'll let you take this.
I want to hop into that. Republicans will never help us. They will always side with Trump. They are all complicit. They are part of the same criminal organization. They have meetings, and at these meetings, they say, well, I need to be able to put out an article. I need to be able to do a press release about me saying, I don't think I can vote for this. And then once I have that press release out, it's going to, Fox will run it, and that'll be good. And then next week, I'm going to be like, oh, it was really tough, but I did it. And Fox won't run that. And it's all part of a media strategy. It's not a conspiracy. It's just media strategy. They know what they're doing. They're not scared of Trump. They're making a lot of money. Well, so they're making a lot of money. They're cementing a lot of power. And if Republicans lose power in a substantive way, that means no slim majorities. If they're successfully able to tilt the field far enough, then they will never face consequences. And if they lost by a once in a generation sort of landslide, they should be going to jail, many of them. Todd Blanche himself, in fact, evidence suggests, I just published a piece about this, evidence suggests, I have to add that, he went to see Ghislaine Maxwell July 25th last year, sat with her for 8 hours without any extra people. She said a bunch of things about Trump and Epstein. They didn't even know each other. They didn't like each other, blah, blah, blah. everything she said to Blanche on the official record 3 days before she was supposed to speak to Congress, everything she said on the record was already disproven by the DOJ. The DOJ had said that these were brazen lies. She tells this to Blanche. He says, great. He says, don't worry, Congress, you don't have to talk to her. And then within a week, she is sent to a facility that does not allow sex offenders. So it does not allow anyone who has more than 5 years left on their sentence. She was a sex offender and had 20 years left on her sentence. Those transfers take months and a long paper trail and many approvals. We have none of the paperwork. And thank you to Representative Raskin, who is seeking to get that paperwork now, but you're not going to find it because it was just
it was somebody from the White House called the Bureau of Prisons after Todd Blanche called the White House, and they said, do X and take her out of there. And folks, Ghislaine Maxwell is in a prison in name only. They have yoga classes, they have Pilates, they have spin classes. They're allowed to have pets for fostering. They get 3 meals a day, and 3 meals a day in Pilates. Where do I sign up for this resort? It's so corrupt.
And an important note here too, by the way, for everyone watching this, because Big Tent USA is going to be, we're partnering to release calls to action. And so the call to action for the Blanche article, the New Mexico Attorney General, Torres, they actually have already started litigation because in 2019, the federal government said, the Trump administration the first time said, if you drop this case against, it was something related to the Epstein files, but they said the Zorro Ranch, it was the Zorro Ranch. If you drop the Zorro Ranch case, then we will give you a bunch of information for you to pursue other cases related to Epstein. They handed over nothing. So 6 years later is better than never. And New Mexico is pursuing this. And what we need is for everybody anywhere. Tell New Mexico Democrats, tell the AG of New Mexico, tell every indivisible group in New Mexico, tell your neighbors in New Mexico. Todd Blanche appears to have handed a quid pro quo, committed criminal fraud, criminal conspiracy, witness tampering. These are New Mexico laws. They are not, this is not DOJ material. If Todd Blanche got a DUI, you wouldn't call the Department of Justice. You'd call New Mexico law enforcement.
Correct.
That's what this is. It's a New Mexico job. So we need you to contact them.
And one thing to remember, folks, while Todd Blanche has tremendous power right now, and while Donald Trump is using him to run the Epstein cover-up, do not forget, in our lifetimes, John Mitchell, Richard Nixon's attorney general, went to federal prison for doing much less than Todd Blanche is doing today. And the statute on all this stuff is going to last for a while, well beyond Trump's term. And lest you guys think, oh, Trump's going to pardon all of them. One of the reasons he's not going to pardon them until the very, very, very end is to keep control over all these people. He knows Blanche is violating the law. He knows all these other people are breaking the law for him and around him, but he's not going to give them a blanket pardon in advance. There's a real chance Donald Trump just drops dead one day and nobody gets the pardon. Those people still need to be held to account. They still need to be held to account. And by the way, he can't pardon them for state crimes. Oops.
And actually, it hurts them if he does, because if you accept a pardon, there's an implicitly you're saying, yes, I did it. And so that actually helps state criminal pursuits. And there's no double jeopardy when it comes to dual sovereignty clause.
Dual sovereignty, right. Okay, let's see. Barbara from Dade County, public schools canceled school lunch and breakfast today. He cuts playing writ large across the country. Listen, the state of Florida, where I live, I'm in California right now, but the state of Florida where I live, they have funneled billions into fraudulent charter schools. And I'm not saying all charter schools are fraudulent, but the ones in Florida, many of which are being now snapped up by private equity firms, you know why that's happening. Those folks, those local schools are suffering tremendously. And Ron DeSantis has planned a ballot initiative this year that would eliminate property taxes in Florida. What do property taxes fund in Florida? Public schools. And that would be they're really working very hard to kill off public education in Florida and in a lot of other places, because these are these plans to cut their budgets are largely, cut and paste things from Heritage Foundation types, ALEC types. It is definitely, Florida public schools are absolutely suffering right now from a very engineered decision to cut their funding across the board. What do we need to do to increase voter turnout? The first question is, ask yourself if you want more voter turnout. The predicate of the 2024 race on the side of the Harris campaign was maximize voter turnout. That's got to be good for Democrats. Well, voter turnout was quite a bit up, but it turned out lower propensity MAGA-leaning voters. So what I would argue for is smarter voter turnout. Turnout people who Democrats think are have a lower propensity to vote or less likely to come out to vote. The Republicans have won twice with Trump at the presidential level by maximizing the voter turnout of what we call ones and twos. Your voter turnout score is on a 5-point scale. A 5 is like most everybody on this call. You vote in every election. You vote in the national elections. You vote in the off-year elections. You vote for the local county commission, city council. In Florida, you voted for the mosquito control board, which we have. Ones and twos are very unlikely to vote unless the candidate is a celebrity. You got a lot of ones and twos came out to vote for Trump in 2024. A lot came out to vote for Trump in 2016. Ones and twos came out to vote for Barack Obama. He became a celebrity. He became a real, gigantic popular public figure. It doesn't mean you have to be a good guy to get ones and twos out. And Trump is certainly done as a bad guy. So I think Democrats need to focus on smarter targeting, not just on the raw expectation of maximized turnout, because there's a lot of stuff out there in the pool you don't want turning it out.
Well, I want to add though that I do believe that voting should be. I mean, people talk about the Second Amendment so dang much, but we don't put in the work as a country to protect voting in the way that I think so many other countries do. I actually do want everybody to be able to vote. I want it to be easy for them to vote. I want them to get automatic voter registration.
What I'm talking about is the political decision of targeting who turns out versus everyone should have the maximal right to vote.
Yeah,
exactly. As little friction for legal people to vote as possible.
Yeah.
If you're an adult American who's not forbidden because you're a felon, or whatever other limited circumstance, you should have the right to vote with the least amount of friction possible.
Absolutely. And as some people watching this know, I worked in law enforcement for 8 years as military police, deployed twice, and spent a year as a corrections officer. And so during that time, I worked with incarcerated populations. And as an activist, I've worked with the formerly incarcerated. And I still, I think even that conversation, just to get that issue out there, that I think every adult American who's qualified to vote should be, we need to push for that. Like, if you want to help democracy, you want to fight back against fascism, whether you're in the reddest county in America or wherever, it's fair to say, I want everybody to be able to exercise their right to vote.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And look, in most states, there is at least some discussion going on of when do you restore the rights of nonviolent felons who serve their sentences and pay their restitution. And I think that number needs to not be 10 years. It needs to be when they've served their sentences and paid their restitution. We can argue about whether violent felons should ever have their rights restored. That's another question for another day. But the targets of people that are having their rights to vote taken away now are not criminals. They just happen to be brown in most places. And that is...
It's political gamesmanship with a right. Like, this is supposed to be your right. We shouldn't be playing political games. Even gerrymandering is a disgusting, abstraction. And I'll just, as another niche issue for the people who are going to do our calls to action, you may have seen some already. We're going to do more about uncapping the limit for the House of Representatives, which could take a simple majority. So the midterms could hand us the ability to overturn the 1919 Apportionment Act and actually uncap. Now, what does that mean? Uncap the House of Representatives? That means, our founders wanted one House representative to represent 30 to 50,000 people. We'd have a lot more House representatives, but it would be almost impossible to gerrymander. We could kill gerrymandering federally by just uncapping the House of Representatives. So expect to see some calls to action on that.
The other thing about gerrymandering is we have a few states that have adopted nonpartisan redistricting commissions, which has not gone as well as you think, because the partisanship has managed to creep through somehow in red states. I don't know how that happened, but we are entering a moment where mathematical redistricting based on simple rules that make districts compact and contiguous and all those things, almost an algorithmic kind of redistricting, is definitely something a lot of academic folks are looking at now as a possibility for the immediate future, because you need to take this out of the hands of political people. I know about redistricting because I was on the other side of this question for a long time. I was very good at that. And what would happen if you had algorithmic redistricting in the country? To the great disappointment of many folks on the far right, there would be an awful lot fewer hardcore, crazy MAGA seats. To the disappointment of people on the left, there will be a lot fewer. There will be a lot fewer hard progressive seats. You would end up getting a better picture of America by either the uncap, which I think is a great hack, by the way. And you're right, it is a simple majority based on 1919 question. Does that have Senate implications too, though? Wasn't there something about the state of? I don't know if that was a bundle with the House and the Senate. I'd have to go back because I'm rusty on my 1919.
No, there was another, yeah. Well, there was another bill that changed it so that the Senate previously was picked by the state legislature,
appointed by the legislature,
but that's a different bill.
Okay, I didn't know if those were contingent or bundled.
Yeah, but I'll say too, Rick. I don't consider myself. I don't like to use a lot of like isms in how I identify. They kind of. Soren Kierkegaard, the founder of existentialism, said that which labels me negates me. And I really like to talk policy. And so you mentioned far right, far left. And to me, I just, 70, 80% is the approval rating for Americans on universal health care.
Yep.
So, I mean, that most people would put that in like the far left range, or like getting rid of nonprofit healthcare. I mean, for-profit. If you polled Americans, you're just going to guess, if you're willing to, how many Americans would say nobody should make more money if I'm more sick? But that's not a moderate position. Centrists aren't approving that, right?
Look, we have a system in this country where the ideological beliefs about healthcare never survived collision with the healthcare system.
Yeah, no.
And I will tell you, back when I was a Republican consultant, one of the people that I did a lot of work with on and remember, folks, I was a Republican consultant in 2010, trying to kill off Obamacare. Right, one of the people that I did a lot of work with ended up getting a debilitating chronic condition, and it absolutely wrecked his life. And when he started encountering actual dealing with the healthcare system, and it's funny, I was thinking about him when I was writing a piece this morning, because the healthcare system is now built to deny coverage to a patient just long enough for them to die without the treatment they need. That's what it's built to do. And for-profit healthcare is not a free market system. It can't be defended as such. And it has frankly reached a point where why private equity is in it, because it's incredibly profitable, and the profitability is derived from not providing healthcare to people. Every other major industrialized nation can somehow pull this off. I think we could handle it if we really sat down to it.
See, but that's just a point I want to make, because you mentioned some things here about like aiming towards voters. And when I look at the most popular politicians America has ever had, I mean, FDR is someone people bring up a lot, but Lyndon B. Johnson is actually a particular favorite of mine. I see those two as having achieved more forward movement for the benefit of all Americans than any other presidents, maybe, at least in the last century. And they were both educators. in how they communicated to people. I mean, well, Johnson had the Johnson technique and that kind of thing, the Johnson treatment, but especially FDR, he educated people, he taught people, he said, this is a good idea, and I'm going to explain it to you, and I'm going to get in front of as many of you as I can. And I think if you want to talk about what wins elections and what's going to change the course of this country for the better, it's going to be people getting up in front and saying, I'm here to advocate, I'm here to educate, and part of that is also listening. But if we allow our morals and values to be superseded by chasing people's dumb ideas, like, what's the point of having a representative democracy at that point? We might as well say, I'm not against direct democracy, to be honest, but if we're going to have a representative democracy, it should probably be people who are freaking know what they're doing. And if you can't, like Kurt Vonnegut said, if you can't explain what you do to a 5-year-old, then you're a charlatan.
Well, one of the things that's broken about this as a representative democracy is there are non-elected players who have a consequential amount of influence that the elected players don't.
Yeah,
and in terms of lobbying and influence on that stuff, it's incredibly important in the process to understand that the money is screaming where voters tend to be whispering. One of the things you're trying to do, Chris, is get these calls to action moving among Big Tent and other groups. Talk to us a little bit about that and how you're pushing forward on that front.
Happy to do it. It started as me. It really started from my process of realizing that, after I really just felt this pain after the election. I cried so hard. I had to stop I was doing a therapy with my Department of Veterans Affairs socialist therapist, because that's socialism, and it's a good one for all us veterans. I was crying so hard I had to stop the call. I was like, I'm not going to be done with this in time, and I'm not going to make you sit here listening to me cry for 5 minutes. And but some of my educational background is also in psychology, and so as I navigated that feeling of tremendous loss, this is an existential problem that we might not recover from as a species. Cognitive behavioral therapy, yeah, and that can be. Look, if you said 10 years from now an asteroid's going to hit, how would you live your life? I think I'd be doing everything exactly the same way as I am right now, and I can't say that would be true if things had gone differently. And that doesn't mean I'm happy that they turned out how they did. It just means you make the best of the situation that you can.
That's right.
And Christopher Reeve is a big inspiration to me. Just as a side note, Still Me by Christopher Reeve, amazing book about you make the best of situations. Sure. But how that led to it, cognitive behavioral therapy. When you're stressed out, when you're scared, when you're anxious, making any decision and taking any action flips a switch in your mind.
That's right. Your
brain says, I'm not totally powerless. I'm going to eat some food. I'm going to go get a cheese stick from the fridge. And that actually helps shift your mind. It shines the spotlight of your consciousness towards the fact that you can do something. And so with that in mind, I started publishing more publicly and writing on law and researching, just trying to learn my way out of all that anxiety. As I wrote, people started reading more and more. And I started sharing, well, I would say I am doing this. I'm an activist, and I wrote about this because I'm stressed about it, and I may or may not know all about it already. And so here's what I learned. And then at the end of it, I'd say, what I did is I sent a letter to my mayor, and did you know actually that you're upset about countries that are creating a police state and destabilizing democracy domestically and abroad? So I write about that, and then at the end of it, I would just say, you know who never gets phone calls is your state treasurer. They never hear from you. They never hear from the public.
No,
and that's I know, Rick. You can tell me if this is true, but lobbyists. I talk to really good politicians, good people at the state level. That's where I like to work. And they say that that the biggest skill of the lobbyists they deal with isn't that they give them money. It's that they take up a lot of their time. They're always around talking about that issue, sending them literature and packets and explainers.
Hey, come have breakfast with me. I want to talk to you about the toilet seat standards bill or whatever random thing they have that day.
Well, and that's so all of this grew out from having like my dad was a city council member when I was a kid, when he was 26, and then elected as a Republican who was pro gun control. They called him a Republicrat, and then he was so sick of politics he went and did HVAC repair. But we talked a lot of politics, and he said, you can get a hold of your city council members. You can bug them and you can affect what they do. You can do that with your state reps. He said, good luck getting a hold of a senator unless you're very wealthy or very powerful. But so the calls to action for Big Tent USA come from this experience. I'm a researcher and I love to learn about what I can personally do that's replicatable, because the strength that we have, that Big Tent USA has, and so many other organizations, is there's more of us than them. It's asymmetric political warfare. And guess what? What happens? What's one of the most common ways that empires fall? They invade a country, and that country does not want them there.
Listen, the Persian Empire has been around the block on this a couple times in the last 5,000 years. And yes, it is one of the things that causes very powerful empires to collapse. I mean, there is a real possibility that Putin's empire is going to collapse because of the overreach into trying to invade Ukraine.
Well, but I'll tell you, so I want to extrapolate that. So what I'm talking about, now that is true, all of that, the United States. I live in Washington State. The MAGA and Trumpism, I don't like them here. And I don't like Trump in Washington, D.C. trying to control what we do in Washington State. We want to have a good education system. We want to have good health care. We want to have our constitutional rights defended. We don't want to have agents who can just punch people in the face. I mean, I watched people when I went to Minneapolis get beat up for playing a silly song on the radio, disappeared for 3 days, no lawyer, no nothing. Those were American citizens. And so this is an invasion from a hostile force that is pillaging our nation. This is our home turf, not theirs.
Listen, the idea that in America, masked and anonymous and armed men can shoot an American citizen in the street and laugh about it, and the fact that those people are not immediately arrested for the abuse of their power should shock everyone's conscience. It is why one of the many, many things that the Democrats must have on their checklist for next year, if we take the House and the Senate, even if we just take the House, we cannot play these games anymore. Nations that create large forces of paramilitary and militarized law enforcement use them. You know, the greatest collapse, to my mind, in this country of our small d democratic values has been ICE and DHS monitoring, surveilling, following, arresting American citizens who protest the raids on immigrant communities.
Yeah.
There's a portfolio, Chris, of a million other things Trump has done. But the fact that they now are comfortable and boasting that they're using this level of power, using this force against Americans, and that there have been no consequences for the people who murdered Renee Good and Alex Preddy and other Americans in the meantime. There have been no consequence for those people. The FBI said they're not going to investigate those cases. They're not going to have civil rights investigations or criminal investigations. That, to my mind, is one thing that if the Democrats do not hold every other bit of spending hostage to that and say this ends today, masks are off, ID badges are on, you guys carry tasers and nothing else, fuck you, is the answer, then they're going to empower these people to keep doing what they're doing.
Well, I got bad news, Rick. That's what's already happened. The Democrats, as minority, even performatively.
Oh, I'm quite aware. Believe me. Listen. As you guys know, the Lincoln Project, we're pretty out there in terms of the clarity of our messaging, to put it bluntly. And we had a very, very powerful, wealthy Democratic donor one time. That's a good cat.
Sorry, she was all.
That's a good cat.
She heard about all the. She hates the ICE situation, and she just wanted to get involved. So,
well, there you go. I asked me one time, he's like, what would you do if you're in charge of X, Y, and Z? I'm like, it would not look like this. Because when you have mass men murdering Americans in the streets, you should be doing something bigger than saying, we're sending a sternly worded letter to Mark Wayne Mullen. But all right, let me get a couple more questions here. I know we're running on the clock.
Yeah.
Talk about how you're preparing for the midterms, what you're worried about in terms of protecting the election. What can we all do to protect the election? Folks, I want to give you the quick rundown. If you live in a red state, there's a very, very, very high probability they're playing some games with purging people off the rolls, with changing voter registrations. You got to check your voter registration. Do it now. Please do it now. Make sure you're still registered to vote, that your registration is still valid. That is the first line of defense. The second thing you should do is you should make sure to cast your vote early. Get it in the system. There are receipts for that. When you go and do an early vote, or an absentee vote, get your receipts for that. Make sure you're following the paper trail. If they don't let you vote on election day for whatever stupid reason about their files, make sure you say to them the words, "I want to cast a provisional ballot." They are required by state law in every single state to give you a provisional ballot. You've got to take those steps on your own first. The second thing you have to do, if you live in a Democratic state, be on the phone and write letters to your governor, your attorney general, and your secretary of state, even if they're not all of your party. Good to have the record there. Telling them that they need to prepare, warning them they need to prepare for federal intervention and illegal federal actions in your state. The good news, folks, is it's very difficult for Trump and these guys to scale deploying ICE and DHS agents to every polling precinct in America. It's tough. They will try it in enough places, and you're going to be shocked to learn they will be in places with a lot of Hispanic voters, a lot of African American voters, and a lot of poor voters. They're going to try to make the process of voting full of fear and friction. That is something that the legal powers in your states, if you live in a blue state, should be arresting these people. They should get restraining orders against Mark Wayne Mullen and the rest of these goons who are going to be doing this absolutely illegal action. I get kind of hot about this.
Well, and just a quick note, they have 20,000 ICE agents right now. They're working on getting that up to 50,000, and that doesn't even tell us what will happen by the time. I mean, Trump's going to have a MAGA army of 50, 100, 150,000, who knows, by the time the next presidential election comes around. And I had an ICE agent scream, "Make America Great Again, bitch," while walking towards me, about to pull his gun out because I was saying, "Please don't shoot me." That happened in Minneapolis. And sorry to curse, but that was what an on-duty federal officer said to me. But I mention all that because at the Existentialist Republic, part of what this partnership is, we have model legislation, kind of like the, like ALEC, but for good things. Like
ALEC, but not evil.
Yeah, ALEC, but not evil. That's a good, I like that. One of those bills is actually the Election Security and Protection Act, which just overtly criminalizes a bunch of different things that this administration is anticipated to do in ways that are minimize the risk of escalation, but maximize the ability to actually just stand up for the law, rule of law. And a governor or AG who isn't on board for that can kick rocks.
Right. And I think Democratic governors, secretaries of state, and AGs need to operate on the presumption that this is not regular order and this is not good faith on the part of the administration. That is why they've been trying to get voter files out of these states, so they can have predicates to go after, to deploy federal forces into states and districts that they want to disrupt. So, folks, I do want to say one thing. I want to end on a happier note. I want to talk a little bit about Hungary. You're thinking, why Hungary? Orban ran Hungary with an iron fist for decades. He was the modern authoritarian that was beloved by Trump and Tucker Carlson and Vance and Rubio and all these people. He controlled all the media in Hungary. If you were an opposing political party, you could not buy radio ads, television ads, or newspaper ads. They monitored and restricted the behavior where you could have rallies. They limited marches and rallies to 250 people and in very limited areas outside of cities. They did everything they could to stop a small d democratic revolution from taking place. And this year, because of the wild, endless corruption of the Orban regime, which makes Trump look like an amateur, honestly, because because of all that, Peter Magyar and their party defeated Fidesz, defeated the Orban party with a dramatic wipeout. They beat them by getting people, and they made the contacts one-on-one, person to person, one person after another. They trained their people to go out and say, we've got to stop this. This is crazy. It's hurting us. We've got to be a better country than this. To my mind, it's one of the most inspirational moments, and we've kind of let it go. We kind of looked away from it already. But that's how we should be thinking about America too. No matter what they throw against us, we are stronger and better than they are at this. We have the numbers. We're right on the question of freedom and liberty. They're wrong on the question of freedom and liberty. We're right on the question of corruption and integrity. They're wrong on that correction, on those issues. And we can do this. It's going to take a lot of work. We've got to have a big win this fall. It's going to rely on everyone on this call going out and doing the hard work, going out and doing the things that matter the most. That's one-to-one contact. It's one thing for me to put a TV ad up somewhere, and that persuades a lot of voters. Or to put digital ads into a campaign somewhere, that persuades a lot of voters. But nothing persuades like one-on-one human contact. And it's something that everybody on this call, and I want to salute Chris's work, because those calls to action will be based on that one-on-one human contact. And the work Big Tent does to bring people together and bring folks into a room to talk about big issues, I think it's incredibly important. And I'm just honored to be here today, folks. Keep at it. You can reach me on socials at the Rick Wilson. My Substack is Against All Enemies. I do something like 475 podcasts. I don't even know them all, but you can catch me all over and at the Lincoln Project, of course. So, Chris, give people where they can reach you on socials.
I don't do anything except Substack.
Good for you. God bless you.
Yeah, I don't want to, so I'm just not gonna. I'd rather I want to be a craftsman of tools, and I'm like, hey, here's a hammer, here's a saw, here's a screwdriver, and I can just keep sending. Mostly I like sending my letters and going and meeting. I call like the calls to action are the things I do.
Sure.
That's if millions of people are pressuring, especially the lowest political offices with very specific demands. I think it's going to take a couple elections. I think that it's going to take just my take on things.
Sure.
Take grassroots, low-level politicians. I'd rather vote for somebody who said they wanted to join. I'd rather vote for a gubernatorial candidate who says Washington's going to secede from the Union and join Canada than vote for a Republican. And if that's what it takes for things to get better, then okay, whatever. But if you want that, whether it's that or anything else, I want to empower you. I don't say, here's what you have to do with this hammer. I make the case as best I can, and I want to equip people, and Big Tent wants that too. And I appreciate the work that the Lincoln Project's doing and that Rick's doing. And you can find me just the Existentialist Republic, and we have a whole team, and we do a lot of cool stuff. But mostly, we need people as part of all this, so that we can all because it doesn't have to be hard. It's not just hard work. There's actually easy work. The calls to action, I want them as mostly to be something you can do during your morning coffee. But you do a little bit every day, and it actually does add up, and you can get better at it. And maybe eventually it takes a little more time than that, but you're excited about it.
Well, we're just an honor to talk to you folks today. Really delighted to be here, and reach out if you have any further questions. There's a million ways to find me. You'll know where to find me. Anyway, thanks to Big Tent for this great opportunity, and you can find me at Against All Enemies Substack and at the Rick Wilson on all the platforms. Have a great day. Keep fighting. Keep up the fight. It's really important.
Care, everybody.
Thanks, everybody. See you soon.